For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, joined alongside Chris Trevino for instant analysis from USC's fourth practice of the spring, and Chris and I's first instant analysis since last season. Chris, it's good to be back with you to talk some USC football spring practice.
Great to be back. I don't think it's a coincidence that USC's return from spring break also coincides with us being back for our first instant of 2023.
It definitely does not, and I think we got to start it off on a familiar footing. Chris, let's talk about the weather, because this is, obviously we're in one of the craziest weather seasons we've seen in Southern California in a long time, and today was no different.
Yes, also the weather coincides perfectly with us being back for instant analysis because we love a good weather report when we're on the mic together. But yes, it's been pouring all day. I got here around 2 o'clock, 2:45, whatever, and it was cloudy and overcast, and rain was coming at 3 o'clock, and it came around 3:30, and raining was just pouring on practice all day. Luckily, we as media got to take some cover while practice was going on, but the Trojans were out there in the elements for all of practice, essentially.
Yeah, and I was out here early, I believe 8:30 in the morning for USC's Pro Day, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but that entire thing, swamped with water, and the track kind of felt like a lake, but overall the Trojans dodging the elements today. But after the elements were over, Chris, what were your overall thoughts from practice?
It's actually funny because it literally just stopped raining right now, but I expect by the time we're done with this instant, it's going to pick up again. That's how the rain's been moving today, on and off. But for the most part, what we got to see with the Trojans, it was pouring on them, and some players, definitely seem to be relishing in it. I know Caleb Williams looked like he was enjoying it. Most of the coaches didn't seem like they didn't care that it was raining. A lot of them just had no reaction to the rain. A lot of players did not seem to like the rain, but as Lincoln Riley mentioned in his post-game presser, which we did inside in the facility underground because we needed some shelter from the rain, he was generally excited to be practicing in the rain. You could see it on his face. And he said, they've actually moved some walkthroughs so they can practice in the rain. They want to get that experience in this type of weather. You're lucky to have Southern California weather all year long, essentially. But there will be games where you're going to get some snow, you're going to get some rain, you're going to get some hard elements. So it's nice to get some of his team exposed to that. So that's why he was fired up today. You could definitely see that he was excited to have this opportunity to practice in some less than clear weather.
Yeah, there's been a discussion today about potentially an indoor facility for USC, and they have a semi-indoor facility underground. But as we mentioned on the Peristyle and on Twitter, there's not really a need for an indoor facility in Southern California, and I think it's clear that Lincoln Riley wants to take advantage of these days because in a couple of years they're going to be playing in the Big Ten, Chris, and they're going to be maybe going out to your country, DMV land, where you and Caleb Williams are both from. They're going to need to be prepared to play in snow, in rain, in hail, and just about any other weather condition that you don't normally see in Southern California. I think it was clear from what we heard from Lincoln today that they want to take advantage of all of these rainy days. But we also got to talk with Lincoln Riley, as you mentioned, and defensive coordinator Alex Grinch today, two of the Trojan head honchos, and the first time we've talked to Alex Grinch since that Cotton Bowl game. We didn't actually, I don't think, get to talk to him after that loss. So it's been a long time since we talked to Alex Grinch. It's been a couple of weeks since we talked to Lincoln Riley. What did you gather from what those two said today after practice?
I mean, we got to start with Lincoln Riley just as the head honcho. He said he's very excited specifically about the defense. He feels like they've upgraded across the board in terms of size, athleticism, depth, all those good things, all those great words. And he feels like specifically the gap last year was too big between what they said was good and then the next level. He says the gap has distanced or closed quite a bit since last season. So that's a good sign, have more rotation, have more guys that can step up and play a role for this defense. And across the board, he feels really good. There are still positions that need to be addressed. He mentioned, you actually asked that question about, they will have some scholarships open, but he didn't quite know the number of how much they're going to be in play for, but he definitely said they will be in the market, so more guys will be coming in to help that defensive front. But as a whole, really excited right now about the upgrades that they've made defensively.
Yeah, I asked him about both sides because he mentioned a couple of weeks ago that the Trojans might look to add another offensive lineman or two. And I was trying to see if he had a ballpark number of how many more transfers the Trojans wanted to bring in. And, of course, last year at this point, Jordan Addison wasn't on the roster, and they went out and got that big splash after the spring game to bring the former Biletnikoff Award winner to USC. Not sure there's a player of Jordan Addison's caliber that's going to be entering the portal, but who knows? Lincoln Riley said, at any position, if there's a player that they want, they're going to go after him. And he said there's really no agenda so far about how many guys they want to add, exactly where they want to add, but he has been telling us for a couple of weeks now that on the fronts of both sides, the offense and the defense, he wants to bring in some people. He says it's probably going to be more than one, but doesn't have an exact number or at least a ballpark number for us yet.
Yeah, we've been saying since, they finished their first run in the portal that two defensive linemen still need to be addressed. You still need some more interior guys to play that nose tackle and defensive tackle position. But one defensive lineman that is on the roster that he was very high on was Anthony Lucas, the 5-star transfer from Texas A&M, Arizona local. He was very high on him. He just said point blank, he's exciting, and I'm glad he's on our team. So I know a lot of USC fans are really fired up about Anthony Lucas. Doesn't have a ton of experience at the college level, only about 7 games, did serve that suspension at Texas A&M, but he's a guy who's making waves in practice and is going to be a guy who a lot of expectations will be on to contribute, to be that Tuli Tuipulotu guy who can be all over the field, move him around. Probably going to start off as an edge rusher, mainly, maybe some of that rush end position. But yeah, looking at him out there, he's different. He gets after it. And yeah, Lincoln is very impressed so far with Anthony Lucas, number 6, rocking the 6 jersey on the defensive line.
A lot has been made about, Trojans' weights moving around. Lincoln Riley says some guys, they addressed it with everyone. Some guys need to up their weight, some guys need to lower their weight, but everyone's adding strength, and he seemed like he was very happy with the ways that the bodies are trending for USC, and a big part of that is everyone talking about, what Alex Grinch wants the defensive line to look like, and we did get to hear from Grinch today. Overall, what were some of your biggest thoughts from what he had to say?
Right, obviously with Grinch, it's the first time we've spoken to him since the dreaded Cotton Bowl result, and he said one of the first things he did was watch the tape. You have to watch that tape, as horrible as it is for a USC fan, and probably to him as a USC coach making his stomach turn. You have to watch that. You have to see what went wrong, and just overall, Grinch didn't give a lot of specific answers. I know you as a USC fan, you're probably asking, well, did they switch this? Did they move this? What are they doing about this? Didn't get into a bunch of specifics, but he just said he is happy with the progress that they've made. And one note is that, you have a lot of guys entering year 2 of this defensive scheme, and just being in year 2 isn't enough. You have to act like a year 2 guy. You have to be an older guy in that room, an older guy on that defense. So you expect them to make a progression just because it's year 2. You can't have that expectation with all the players. They need to know that it's year 2 and step up accordingly, being an older guy, being a guy that has reps in this scheme. That was one of the big takeaways from listening to Alex Grinch today.
Outside of Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley, there were a lot of offensive players for USC, and we've talked about a lot. So I'll just ask you point blank, of all the guys that we talked to, what are some things that stuck out?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that we got to hear from 2 of the new transfers. That's Marshawn Lloyd, the big running back out of South Carolina, SEC country, and then Dorian Singer, the wonderkin wide receiver, former walk-on who turned into an all Pac-12 receiver at Arizona, who murdered the Trojans defense last year when they played. So those were guys to hear from. Dorian Singer, he said USC was the first school to hit him up right when he entered the portal, and I believe it after what he did to them in that game in Tucson. And then Marshawn Lloyd said Tennessee was actually the first school to hit him up, but he had that prior relationship with Caleb Williams. If you don't know, they both went to schools in the WCAC, Gonzaga for Caleb Williams, and DeMatha, which is actually my alma mater for Marshawn Lloyd. So he says, yeah, we played together in Little League and played against each other in high school. And he said, I hated it because Caleb Williams is unstoppable, as college football fans have come to know. So he was so happy that he was able to be on his team. Caleb Williams recruited Marshawn Lloyd by texting him. He's like, hey, come here, let's win a national championship, and let's go to the league together. That was it, and Marshawn Lloyd was in, and he's a quiet kind of guy, leads by example, kind of that, but he says the young guys have been helping him break out of that. Amarian Peterson mainly is someone who's been asking him for advice, so it's forced him to be a more vocal leader. So that's something that's new, but he's really excited to be a Trojan overall, to be here, be with this program that got so close to winning a championship last year, and wants to help them get over that hump. And he's a big dude. I don't know if you saw him up close, but he is a built dude at 5'9", probably 220 pounds. He is going to be a wrecking ball. After running through the SEC, I wonder what it's going to be like looking at it in the Pac-12, but he's definitely going to be, I would assume, their power back. And he said, I do have some speed too, so don't count me out there.
Well, and I don't think it takes much of an upsell from the former Heisman Trophy winner to say, hey, come play with me and we'll go to the league together. I think you believe in what Caleb Williams is preaching to you over the text message. And to talk about Dorian Singer, Lincoln Riley mentioned him too, saying he makes so many of these just crazy catches that just about every ball that goes up to him, you're expecting him to bring it down. And when he doesn't, it kind of seems like the anomaly outside of the actual crazy catches that he is able to make. And we saw plenty of those in the Arizona game last year for USC. But Lincoln Riley, effusive in his praise for Dorian Singer. And we just got to talk to a lot of very dynamic players on offense, including Miller Moss for this kind of the first time that we've really talked to him. And Lincoln Riley did mention him a little bit because he did throw at the pro day today. And he got a lot of the Cotton Bowl reps while Caleb Williams was injured. And Lincoln Riley saying that he took a big leap using those reps and gained a lot of confidence, which is important at playing quarterback. And, he was up front with reporters saying, the way that his career has gone at USC so far isn't exactly how he planned it would go, but also, he's sitting behind the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback right now. That's a lot of competition, and he told himself when he committed, I'm either going to compete now or I'm going to compete later before I go into the draft. So Miller Moss isn't given up yet, and Lincoln Riley definitely seems like he's making a lot of progress so far this spring. What have you seen from Miller Moss, and do you have any takeaways from what Lincoln said about him or what he said to us?
Yeah, Miller is just always a consummate pro, just great quotes, so smart for his age and wise, and he's able to have that perspective. And Lincoln said he's in the best shape of his life. You see that real development from this quarterback position in this system, and I hope, and then a lot of fans hope that Miller Moss can actually get some reps this season. There were a ton of opportunities for him to come in and play a whole quarter or a whole half after getting a big lead. You hope to see more of those games, but I really want to see what Miller Moss can do with more extended periods of time, and I think he's earned that. I think he's earned that opportunity to go out there and play a little more than he is. Obviously, it is tough when you have a defending Heisman winner ahead of you. It makes sense, but I think Miller Moss has earned the opportunity to get some playing time and showcase all the hard work that he's put in with the system and learning it and developing and getting in shape. So I'm excited to see Miller Moss out there at some point in 2023.
And we mentioned it was a very busy day here on campus, pretty much an all-dayer for most of us here at USCfootball.com, because the Trojan Pro Day was this morning as well. And, of course, these are former Trojans. Doesn't exactly have to do with what USC is doing in the spring, but everything kind of wheels itself back around. You had the rain in the morning. It was supposed to start at 8:50 a.m. and didn't get started until about 10 a.m. because the players had to go down and do some drills with the scouts and with their agents underneath on the inside facility, whether that be the bench press or any of the jumping. So we didn't get to see any of that like I think we hoped we would be able to, but we got to see the players run 40s. Again, it was in what was basically a lake on the field, so I would not take those times too seriously. You can find those on the USC website. They ended up posting all the official, but they call them unofficial times. You had Travis Dye running in the 4.7s. You had Terrell Bynum between a 4.4 and a 4.5, but it was ugly conditions, but the players were, they were making the most of it, and you ended up having Miller Moss throwing to receivers like Jordan Addison, who did run routes, Terrell Bynum, tight ends Josh Follow, and Eric Kromenhoek, who was a 2021 graduate, as well as Travis Dye, who we saw out there. And then mostly what we were all there for were the interviews, because we got to talk to Andrew Voorhees, Brett Nealon, Travis Dye, all guys who recently have had, injuries that either ended their USC career or injuries that, changed their draft stock a lot, like we saw with Andrew Voorhees before he put up the 38 bench press reps. So we got to talk to a lot of those guys, and it was really nice, a bookend to their USC careers, being able to talk to Brett Nealon for the first time since his injury, being able to talk to Travis Dye for the first time since last season, and then being able to talk to Andrew Voorhees for the first time since the Combine. It was nice to be able to hear some of those stories. All of those interviews are linked up on this page, as well as some with Mekhi Blackman and Jordan Addison, who, despite the weather, all 6 of them went out there and they put on their best show.
For sure. I always love Pro Day because it is that full circle moment. We talk to these guys. Like, I did the first interview with Andrew Voorhees when he was a true freshman in spring. I got to be there for that. And then you've come full circle. Obviously, his circumstance is not the best, just going with the ACL injury. But just to see those guys come back and do kind of their final interview at USC out there at Loker Stadium, it feels nice. You get to talk to parents because they come out to the Pro Day. So it is a nice way to cap a USC media career, if you will, because that's the final interview we usually do with them. So, yeah, you were a trooper for coming out for Pro Day. You live on campus, so, it wasn't a terrible commute. But the rain, you weathered it. But, I was there for the Sam Darnold rain Pro Day. So we're even now, and then we'll both probably be here for Caleb Williams in a year or so.
Yeah, well, Caleb Williams was here today, too. And you're not going to see that reported as much as the Times, but Caleb Williams and Justin Dietich and some other Trojans were out there cheering on or maybe jeering at certain players after they're running their 40 or throwing some balls or running through some drills. They were all there to support their teammates. I even saw, Caleb Williams mentioning to some of the players, we got to get to class, but they were up pretty much right until they had to leave to go get in their seats for class because they wanted to support their teammates, and that's something you're not going to see reported as much, but there's definitely a brethren being built here at USC under Lincoln Riley, and you saw that showing out a lot through USC's Pro Day this morning. But it was a day, Chris, full of USC football news as well as full of just some of the craziest weather that you're going to see here in Southern California. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I got a couple last thoughts. One thing I wanted to say that from the Grinch interview is that, he said when you have a season like this, for the defense, there's going to be quote unquote bullets flying at the coaches, and he said those are deserved. You understand why those are happening. You understand with the results that they had, that in this business it's about results. So he understands, a lot of the criticism that's coming. He said it's deserved for them because they have to be better, put those kids in a better position, and above all, play better defense. We also got to talk to Taj Washington and Brendan Rice, who now are the old wide receivers in that room. There was a lot of asking about them being the old heads in that room, being the leaders. And Brendan Rice talked about how, he's had that, he felt so good in that Cotton Bowl because he finally felt like the chemistry with Caleb Williams clicked. That was the moment, and we saw the results. And he said they're trying to be Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. They're trying to have that chemistry, that connection. He said early in camp, it's still there from the Cotton Bowl. He's feeling it. So, stock rising a little bit for Brendan Rice and what he could do. And he claims it's going to be his final year. He says he's out of here. I don't know if he was joking, but that's what he said. We'll have the interview up. But it seems like he intends to make this his final year at USC. And Taj Washington, he kind of more quiet and reserved. He's ready to take the next step in his game. He had a really, really good season, really was tremendous down the stretch, just trying to be another level of Taj Washington. All that starts with, consistency, and he's being a leader to some of those younger guys like Zachariah Branch and Mekhi Lemon. And the final thought, Brendan Rice said he's the fastest wide receiver in that room. I do not know if it's true. He said they all raced and that was it, and he won, so we'll see. Brendan Rice saying he's bigger, he's faster, and stronger than he was last season. So a lot of good notes there.
I think you come away with maybe a stronger, faster, bigger Brendan Rice than the Cotton Bowl, where he already set a Cotton Bowl receiving record. That would be a pretty big jump for the Trojans. And as well as Taj Washington, who you mentioned had a good season. It felt like he was almost underrated at times for all the jobs he was doing for USC, stepping into a bigger role this year. But we mentioned it's a busy day for us. It's probably a busy day for you guys too, seeing all this news coming out. We've got a ton of videos on the channel, so I'll let you guys take a couple days, but make sure you're watching all those interviews, watching this analysis here, going to check out. Chris, did you write Ghost Notes today?
I did write.
You did write Ghost Notes today, so make sure you go check out those Ghost Notes at some point too. But anyways, for Chris Trevino, I'm Jack Smith. Check out USCfootball.com for more.